Hi there, this is Jen, and thanks so much for joining me on the ScrapbookPal YouTube channel. Today I'm creating 3 Valentine's cards using the new stamp set by Catherine Pooler called Two Part Hearts. And there's a stamp set as well as matching dies. And I'm also going to use this stencil called Scribbled Circles. And I'm just going to go ahead and start out using the stencil, and I am starting out with some Catherine Pooler inks, and the first color I'm using is Lime Rickey, and then I'm going to blend in Party Dress, and I'm just picking 2 or 3 spots randomly that I want the color to be in, and then filling in the space with the other colors. And then this last color is Lemongrass, and I'm just going to leave a little bit of white space over on that right hand side of the card. And then I'm going to spritz with this Avery Elle Clear Shimmer Spray. And after I spritz that, I probably let it sit for about 10 seconds, and then I'm going to take a paper towel, and just like with watermarks, I'm just going to blot up any excess of that spray, and it's going to leave those really cool watermarks. And then I'll set that aside to dry, and then I'm going to start working on the heart. So I'm only using one of the stamps and one of the dies in this set. And so I'm going to go ahead and ink that top part of that heart up with the Be Mine ink in Catherine Pooler. And then I'm going to use a Sweet 16, which is a really light purple color. And I'm going to grab the bottom portion of that heart and kind of match that up. And the Misty or a stamping tool is really super helpful for doing this. I am going to do another card where I show you where I'm doing it without the Misty, so it can be done. It's just a lot easier with a stamping platform, especially if you have inks that are not super juicy any longer and need to be re-inked, which I need my ink pads to be. And once the image is stamped, I use the coordinating die to go ahead and die cut that image out. I also created 2 extra images that were die cut just using some plain white paper so that I could give the heart a little bit of depth. And then I went ahead and stamped up the Be My Valentine sentiment and used a circle die from Catherine Pooler from the Notecard Trims die set. And then I'm going to go ahead and splatter a little bit of the Spellbinders Sparkle Silk onto the card and adhere that to a 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 size card base. And that's going to finish off the first card. For the next card, I am taking the dies first, and I am just laying them out onto a white piece of cardstock, and then I will take a piece of temporary tape and just put that over all of them and then run that through my die cut machine. And then this time I'm going to hand stamp, and so I'm going to start out with the Catherine Pooler ink Be Mine, and I'm using the smallest heart to stamp on the die cut heart. And then I'm just going to follow the same process for each of the die cuts. I am choosing a top portion of the heart and a bottom. I don't think I do any side-by-sides on this, but that second set of colors was Rockin' Red and Party Dress. This heart right here, I am using Sweet 16 and Party Dress. These are all Catherine Pooler inks. And then next set, I am using Samba and Party Dress once again. And then for the last heart, I'm going to stamp up the Sweet 16 on the top, or on the side, and the other side I am using a Rouge. And that will finish off the stamping. I don't think I did too bad, but it's not absolutely perfect, which is totally okay. And then I'm going to take the die cut cardstock, the negative space, and I'm going to lay that over the panel and tape it on one side so I have a little bit of a hinge so that I can get the perfect placement for my heart. So I'm just taking a little bit of liquid glue and adding that, and then placing the heart, and then just using that hinge on that piece to make sure that none of the glue seeped under and stuck that piece of cardstock. But I am going to use that cardstock as part of the card, and so I've added a bunch of foam adhesive to the back and adhered that right over the hearts. And then for the sentiment for this one, I am going to use You Make My Heart Go Pitter Patter. And I've grabbed a piece of red cardstock and used some white ink and then white embossing powder as well. And I am just adding a little bit of super thin foam to the back. I didn't want it really thick because I've already got that foam behind the panel popped up. And then I'm grabbing a piece of black and white twine, and I'm just going to wrap that around that left side. and tie it in a little bit of a knot, and then tie a bow. And then I'm going to use some enamel dots from Altenew, and these are called a Tea Party enamel dots. And that's going to finish off the second card. I really love the way white and red looks together. It's just really super clean. And then for a little bit to break that up, I use that piece of black and white twine. On to the third card. This is probably my favorite. A little bit more labor intensive than the others, however. So I went ahead and I started out with a piece of watercolor paper, and I'm going to use some Distress Oxides for this card. So I stamped up the stamp in Seedless Preserves first, and then I spritzed that with water, and then I'm going to lightly press that into my watercolor paper. So this is going to give it a little bit of a watercolor look. I really love that effect, and so if you want more of a watercolor look, you can always spray more water and then set it back down. And then you can always blot up any excess water from that image with a paper towel or a baby wipe. I'm basically going to do the same thing I did with the other stamped images. I'm just using a top and a bottom portion and choosing my ink, and then following the same process with stamping the color and then spritzing with water. The second color for the bottom portion of this heart is Worn Lipstick, and I'm going to again follow the same thing and just go ahead and spritz that with water and then press that down into my watercolor cardstock. And then when I pull that up, if there is water sitting on top of the paper like this one, I'll just go ahead and take my baby wipe and blot that up so that removes a little bit of that water. The second heart, I used the colors Mowed Lawn and Salvage Patina, and then on that third heart, I used Festive Berries and Aged Mahogany, and I took the coordinating dies and I cut those out. And I wanted these to be sewn hearts, but I don't have a sewing machine or even a handheld sewer, and I don't really know how to sew. And so, but I do have thread and needles. And so what I chose to do was I'm taking this little pointer tool and I'm making holes in the hearts so that when I put my needle through it, that it will go through the paper a little bit easier and not tear the paper too badly. But what I'm going to do is I am stitching this on underneath a piece of tracing paper, and I'm using tracing paper because tracing paper is really thin and it's not going to crack. So if you have vellum and you're doing this technique, it might work a little bit better with vellum if you're using a sewing machine, but with this technique of putting the needle through, vellum is likely to crack, especially if it's a heavy vellum. A thinner vellum might work though pretty well. But I, for my life, could not thread a smaller needle than this one. So the holes are a little bit bigger than what I wanted, but I made it work. I'm basically doing some simple stitches, just up, through, and then back, double back, to kind of fill in that space. And I'm going to do that with all of the hearts, the 3 hearts that I have. And then to make sure that it's secure, I am going to use a little bit of Scotch tape to tape the back of the hearts to make sure that that thread isn't going to move anywhere. And once my hearts are secure, I am going to go ahead and just tear with my hands the vellum around the edges so that it is kind of a little more of a distressed look. And then to add a little bit of color to the background, I'm going to do some ink smushing. So I have a piece of plastic stamp packaging, and I'm taking some Distress Oxides. I'm using Mowed Lawn first, spritzing that with water, and then just turning that over onto my Bristol Smooth cardstock and smushing that ink on there. And then I will take a wipe and blot up any excess that I don't want there. And I'm just going to follow that process across the card. So the colors that I'm using are the same as the colors that I used for the hearts. And so I used Mowed Lawn, Salvage Patina, Seedless Preserves, Worn Lipstick, and then the last color is Festive Berries. And I'll go ahead and dry that off and trim about 1/8 of an inch around that card panel, and then adhere that to a 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 white panel. And then I stamped the sentiment that says I love you, and I added a little bit of foam behind those hearts just to pop that away from the card a little bit. And then to finish the card off, I am going to use the Spellbinders Sparkle Silk again, just add a few little splatters. And that's going to finish off the card and my video for today. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, please go ahead and leave a thumbs up. We would also love it if you would subscribe to the ScrapbookPal YouTube channel. Lots of inspirational videos from the design team members. Also, if you're interested in any of the products that I used today, those will be linked below in the description. Thanks so much for joining me today, and I hope to see you next time.